this looks good.
Oh my God, this is delicious.
So now we're gonna move into our plate of the day. So showing up as me, Latina or Black, right? So we really want to dig into sort of identity politics a little bit. You know, as Dominicanas, we know that Dominicans have a particular rep around being anti-Black. And I put that in air quotes because I think that the root of some of those sentiments don't necessarily come from hate of Black people. It comes from a conditioning of an island, from dictatorship and presidencies and witnessing the treatments of Haiti, right? Like that makes you feel unsafe in Blackness. And so you do everything you can to distance yourself from something that you see people are suffering in. And so it's like a psychological thing, but it's not like, oh, I see you, you're dark, I hate you. It's not that simple. And I feel like people often try to make it seem like it's that simple. There's also the fact that, like, you know, Trujillo was in office until I think it was like 61 or 63, 1961 or 63.
Yo creo que fue 63.
Right? And that's not that long ago. My parents were already born when that happened, right? Like, you know, so what we're saying is that we're dealing with a generation of people who actually were raised and very close to the hands of a nation where the mode and what they were encouraging was that washing, and a lot of it was subconscious. Brainwashing is a real thing, right? So
yeah, y el maltrato.
Yeah, you know, so I feel like it's too easy to just say, oh, Dominicans are anti-Black. Okay, so where does that come from if we are in fact Black, right? But then, you know, I feel like as a Dominican, and because we are talking about a history that's not so far behind, we aren't necessarily taught how to be Black or own our Blackness. We just know Dominican. So we say Dominican and we know all the things that means, but we don't necessarily know, like, oh, bachata comes from Black culture in this way. And we don't know the specifics. So when we claim that, we are still claiming our Blackness, but for some of us, we don't acknowledge or realize that also means to claim that we're Dominican is to also claim some of our Blackness. And then for, you know, some of us que no parecemos blanquito, o lo que son jabao y cosas, you know, like the lighter skinned Dominicans, like they're still claiming Dominicanness. And so, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're claiming Blackness, because they aren't Black, but they are from an island that has a deeply rooted Black culture, right? And so like, the participation then in Blackness or the acknowledgement of it feels a little weird, because it's like, well, I guess I'm not Black, but I am Dominican. And Dominican culture is Black, so I'm a white person in a Black culture. Like there's so many, and it like makes my head explode, right? But I feel like the depths and the layers of that makes for us being aware of our identity as we go through our lives and our journeys in anything that we do. So my first question to you guys is like, what is or was your initial perception with this idea of your Blackness, like as a Dominican?
Yeah, so I can start. So like I was raised in Dominican Republic, right? So like I went to school and I went to both public and private schools, and I encountered, you know, gente de diferentes tonos de color, o sea, from like Black, más morenito, más indio, todo lo que había. And growing up, I felt the anti-Blackness rooted in my family, but I never questioned it. And I didn't know so much where it was coming from, you know, because the history that they teach you in the art about Trujillismo no habla mucho o no habla casi nada de que Trujillo era un racista.
Right, so they don't
Trujillo was Black himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, they don't talk about that. They just teach you that Trujillismo was bad and it was like whatever. And you still have people in the island that are pro Trujillo. So it's like, growing up,
they're the equivalent of white nationalists on the
exactly. And like I grew up listening to like comments that I thought back in, you know, I was like, that's rude, but era como no te sientes con el chamaquito, or you know what I'm saying? Like if te está siguiendo un moreno, un haitiano, ya tú sabes, corre. Like things that were really, really, like there's no way that you can that you could be okay with this. But I was growing up. But my first realization came when I transferred to Clark University, that I met Afro Latinos. I was like, and like my friend earlier, she was telling me that one day I made a comment that it was not okay. And like she approached me and she told me why it wasn't okay. And it's because for a very long time, I was conditioned to experience in this country racism towards me. And it's crazy that I was conditioned to experiencing that racism towards me for having my hair like this. Pero yo no entendía where that was rooted from. You know what I'm saying? So when I first came to Clark University, that I had the opportunity to learn about what it meant to honor your ancestors and how I am a reflection of my ancestors, and that I identify as an Afro Latina. I'm black. I embrace that. And I actually took the time during college to learn a little bit more about the history, the Trujillo. And that's where I was like, yo, so when my aunt said that meant this. You know what I'm saying? But I feel like it's something that it's constant and it's forever evolving. And I don't like there's people that they have reached a point where their identity, where they're like, así que yo me identifico. This is how I feel with my blackness. But as a Dominicana, as an Afro Latina, and as someone who's proud of, the blackness that's rooted in the island, I feel like I'm still unpacking that, and I still have so much more to learn, and I'm still figuring it out. How do I go about educating my family, or do I just ignore those comments that are hurtful to me and to other, like, my black fellows? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, how do you navigate that? And I don't think there's not that, like, I don't know, like, it's good to have these conversations because you get inspired from them and you learn new ways. But that's such an individual journey too. But you got all your ancestors back there. You know what I'm saying? So it's like individual, but then you got your people, and then you got to root for them, and like you got to create those spaces. But yeah, it's just a journey. And I think now I'm at a point where, like, I'm accepting the hurtful things because I'm changing the narrative for the way that I was taught. If that makes sense. And it hurts, learning, like, cómo que la gente de mi patria puede ser a veces tan racista con otros hermanos. You know what I'm saying? And it's even more hurtful, but it's just, yeah, like in college, I had a lot of friends, and, like some of my best friends, they were from Haiti and like Dominicans. So like, it's like La Isla Española is coming together, and we're having these conversations that make us uncomfortable, but it's okay us being uncomfortable with it, because that means it's growth, and we're learning new ways how to educate our families, and how to take more ownership of where we come from.
Yeah. And you know what's funny? It's funny. I learned this, I think, last week, that, like, because I always said, oh yeah, the island of Hispaniola, but it was originally, actually, it's IT, like, not IT the same, but the name of the island is IT, right? And
No way. What? I don't know that.
Wait, pero spelled como?
I was gonna say, I don't remember exactly how it was spelled. I was in a clubhouse room and they were talking about it, but like the guy was saying, he was like a like professor of something, and he was like, actually, if we go before Spain and all that, actually the name of the island was IT, right?
Wow.
Close to Haiti, but that's how Haiti got its name. Like, Haiti got its name from the root of where the island name come from. But this idea of Quisqueya and all this stuff comes through. And think about it, Hispaniola is Hispanic. He's Hispanic. Like, it's not, but that's not what the island was. The island was never rooted in Spain. Spain arrived. They didn't create it.
Yeah, that's so good that we're learning.
Like, at the root of it, Hispaniola was the name that it was decidedly given as an island, not that it is born with. Yeah. And I'm actually like, I want to do more research on it. Literally, it blew my mind, because like we were talking and somebody had said Hispaniola, and we had been saying it the whole time, right? Like, instead of trying to say, oh, DR versus Haiti, we were saying, like, and the island is one island. Somos Hispaniola, nosotros toditos somos blah, blah, blah.
It makes sense, though.
Actually, just want to chime in.
No, but it makes perfect sense. Even in the name of it, like Española, it's true. That's a name rooted in, like, Spain. Like, it's not. Wow.
It sounds like Spain.
Yeah.
Like,
it sounds like Hispanic. It sounds like
Española. Sounds like Española.
Wow, that's nuts. That's crazy.
But it's the way, it's like you guys, it's like you pointed to, and then I want to let Jaylee answer too. But I think it's so interesting because that's what I say is that like the racism is racism, and no matter how they developed it, it doesn't make it not racism. But I think it's important to understand because then when we get mad at each other, if we take a moment not to get mad at each other, but to get mad at the oppressor together, then maybe we can shift the conversation in a different direction because we can talk it to death. Yes, Dominicans can be racist. Yes, the Dominican government treats Haitians terribly. Like all of these things are true, but understanding the source of it, I think is key for the people who don't recognize the racism or don't want to call it what it is. I think they have to actually see how many generations of being fooled is behind the opinion that they hold. And perhaps if they knew the full truth of the opinion that they hold, that maybe it'll be easier to get them to stop being so fucking racist.
Exactly. And like you, como que when I was learning about the history, I was like fire up and like I was gathering this hate towards like, not my family necessarily, but like racist Dominicanos. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then now that I had to unlearn that, but it took me time to understand that it comes from like el trujillismo, Valerie, like relax, like not, you know, like you don't have to generalize where something that makes you feel so proud of like being Dominicana. So it's, you know, it's like a process of learning.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and speak a little bit from at least what I feel that I can consider that I can bring to the plate, you know, to the table to talk about the conversation. Because I was born and raised in Rhode Island. So I'm pretty much, let's say, Dominican American. Pero yo en mi corazón, yo me siento 100% dominicana, como que if I would have been born there. But my family, both mom and dad, were pretty much, I would say like 85%, like they look like me. Like my whole family son blanco, ojo verde, rubio, de los dos lados. Yo sí te cuento que I've had a little bit of that experience, as Valerie was saying, I think more with my family, in terms of the racism. Like I do remember desde chiquita, always, que it was like, uno veía una persona de color and it was like, I don't even like to use the word because it's so ugly, pero uno decía como, mira ese negro que viene caminando, o mira quién es esa persona que está, como que right away it was always a negative reflection towards somebody that had any sort of color that was any darker than what I was.
Prieto was like the worst of it. Like,
that was the word.
Ococolo.
It like is vividly in like my head because I remember it. And I remember always also like not questioning it at that point, but I would always fight with my dad. We would have conversations about this. And like, I think there was a time when I was in school, I think around middle school, that I had some sort of passion with African-American history. Like literally, I think we can add, like social studies was like one of my favorite subjects. And me and my dad would always go at it and sitting at the dinner table discussing like me trying to like, como que on their side. And my dad's like, no, because this and like we would go at it about this. So it was something that I've always been passionate about. I've always been a person that I don't look at color. I don't look at anything. Like desde chiquita. Pero I have been, I think last year, so we launched the store on June 18th and then June 19th, and during June fue que pasó todo lo que pasó con los rallies, tuve con todo. And I remember during that time, I learned a lot from Valerie. I remember during that time, I comenzó como que lo de white passing y lo de all these things, you know, that you needed to, for me, were all like new. Like I'm a person who like I live in my bubble. Like I'm not really, you know, I don't expose myself to so many things, but I do have a voice and I do for some things need to be heard. So I remember when all that was happening, I was like, but I don't understand the white passing. Like I'm not white, I'm fucking Dominican. And like I'm Dominican and I might be white skin, but like Valerie's Dominican, she's a little bit more morenita. Like I have other Dominicans that are like black, más negrito, but it's like we're all Dominican, like at the end of the day, you know? So for me, like those are the experiences that I can probably like talk about that I feel comfortable about, you know, to share here in the discussion.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that because I think that especially, which is why I even started the framing as a like blackness, but specifically around the frame of being Dominicana. And I feel like the same can be said for Boricua culture as well, right? Like, but it's all coming from a lot of the same thing. I think that the thing that makes DR stick out past Puerto Rico and a lot of other places in the Caribbean, right? Because even Cuba, right? Like Cuba has a bunch of Afro Latinos that are suppressed and like whatever, but because we share the island with the first free fucking black nation in the world.
Yeah.
And the root of our history is like in DR, when they teach the history, they say, oh, well, we, we got our independence from Haiti because Haiti was trying to enslave us and make us.
Robarnos todo y hacer brujería en nosotros y toda esa vaina. And you're like,
and no one bothers to actually see what Haiti actually, if you reverse and look at it from a different perspective, they weren't trying to enslave people and stuff like that to oppress the Dominican. They wanted the whole island to be a free black nation. But people did not like that. The idea that the leadership were going to be these black people after we've had the experience of Spain, right? Like in understanding Spain and knowing that culture, y eso era fino, y esa gente vinieron en estos botes, and things that we didn't have on the island originally. It's kind of like, no, fuck this. I want the nice shit. I want the white people shit. And
glorifying whiteness.
And so we were taught to glorify it in a way that literally like, I mean, like we could talk about the history for days, but I'm just saying that's why I framed it around that, because yes, like, if white passing, whatever term you want to use, like, sure, you are not like Afro-Latina in that way, but you are from an Afro-Latinx culture. You are from that culture. So I think it's important to allow people to understand what their place is, and you can't allow them to understand it if you don't even allow them in the discussion. You know what I mean? Like to learn, like if you were to trip up and say something wrong, like con amor, we can correct each other. And it's not about hate, because ultimately your goal is to want to learn and grow and be better.
Like there's so much unlearning that needs to be done. And I think that when it comes to this conversation, todo lo que tú estás aprendiendo, and I feel like this sense of like getting everything right. And it's like, no, sis, I'm learning. And este mi país también. And with that comes the history and the baggage and the good and the bad. La playa, pero también lo malo.
Yep.
The crime rates. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I feel like there's this pressure that's placed, digo, en las voces dominicanas, I would say las que están acá in the US, because the conversation is constantly flowing, because in the art, I don't really sit on the dinner table talking about my Afro-Latin. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't do that, but here it happens a lot. And like, I went to college here, ahí también pasaba mucho. And I feel like there's this pressure of you having to know and having to get all the answers. And it's like, no, I'm doing my part. You do got to be educated. Porque tampoco te ponga a hablar de algo que tú no sabes. Because shut up and allow somebody that knows to speak. Pero it's okay for you to have the good intention in your heart to learn and to be a voice or be an ally. You know what I'm saying? Like, and know where you stand, but do take up space, because your voice does matter.
Yeah, 100%. And so sort of to transition into the fashion beauty world, right? I'm curious, what is the perspective that is taken on, or the way in which Afro-Latinas are represented within fashion or not represented? And are there any like overarching stigmas or stereotypes and assumptions of like what fashion should look like for them because they're Black? Or is that like not a thing? I'm just curious about putting an Afro-Latina in the context of this fashion industry world here in the United States, right? Like, what does that even look like? Do they even get to be an Afro-Latina, or is it like nope, you got to pick a side?
I think I'm going to speak a little bit to here, but also a little bit to DR, only because I've been trying to educate myself and work. Now that we're working on the collection in DR, like I have a call with a friend of ours that has a modeling agency in DR, because we were looking at kind of updating and ¿cómo se dice? Como allowing the space for other perfiles to be part of Posh Palma Styles that is not just me and Valerie. Like, we don't want you to come on the site and you just have two people to look at. Like, I want all shapes, sizes, colors, like everyone to be on the site. So now we're like, you know, digging into more with that. And I know in terms of like, let's say Dominicana moda and like, you know, Dominicans being in the fashion scene, I feel like in terms of Afro-Latinidad, in terms of color, hair, like all of that, I think it's slowly starting to be accepted. I don't think it's like 100% that's what I see on the fucking runway. But I think number one, I always see is the health issues. Like the fact that like how you look, like in terms of like your weight, right? So you're a 6 feet tall, like skinny ass woman who's dark skinned with a fro. But like, why can't I see a curvy ass woman down the runway? You know what I mean? Like, I think that's more of the issue of what I'm seeing. I think in terms of color, hair, and all of that, I think it's getting better. The world is changing, gracias a Dios. But I think in terms of the stigma, when it has to do with your appearance of how skinny you are, like that's still like in
there.
Yeah, it's
they
still
care
like
more about that than they care about your race. Is it?
Yeah, like it's like you could be black and skinny, but that's okay. But like you can't be black and like you got curves. Like no, like that's what I'm more like interested in learning and seeing how the world continues to evolve. And with the store, we're gonna do our part to incorporate that, you know, because we can control what we can control again. And again, whenever our voices could be heard in those spaces, we will talk. And hopefully little by little, that's how change will happen.
Yeah. I mean, look, the only thing that bothers me with that, like, well, there's multiple things, but like one of the things that bothers me is that I think that people in that industry does not know how to differentiate between it being trendy, and you actually having the intentionality to change what has been in place for years. And I feel like now, como curly hair is very trendy, and I feel like there's a lot of things that do come from like, you know, like Black women's fashion that they invented it, and now it's being taken on as like a trend, you know, and it's like they're still not giving them credit for that. So I feel like I don't know if when will we get to that point, but I do feel hopeful for, you know, people like us creating spaces and like making sure that there's more women and men being represented, you know, porque también men do go through that. And you know, that's like, we can talk about that for days too. So it's just, I don't know. I think it's that a lot of people it's just so trendy to like even to be Black, like, you know, and it's like, it's not okay for you to use it as a trend or as your Black card that you can play when you want to and when you don't want to. Yeah. So I get
to be Black, to be woke.
Yeah, like, oh, I'm so woke right now. And then, you know what I'm saying? Like, so like I don't think the spectrum is clear, and I feel like people continue to misuse it and misjudge it, and people still get taken advantage of.
And I think a lot of that, what you guys mentioned, has to do with the people that are running the industry still. Like, even though we're out here making these strides towards like trying to diversify everything that's being put out, you still have a bunch of old white people that are investing in the industry and
exactly.
So
and that tells you el dinero, o sea, like
the
money,
power.
El dinero pesa. Entonces, like, but that's why we gotta keep putting in the work. So in a few years, we are the ones allá making these decisions that create change desde abajo, de donde nosotros empezamos. Sorry guys, my cousin.
No,
but yeah, create so we could be the ones at the bottom creating the spaces.
Yeah. And I also think that like, and part of where like the question came up for me is because like, even in my own journey into, I mentioned I'm not a fashionista, I'm not into it. A lot of it had to do with the fact that I wasn't seeing anybody who looked like me in American culture, either TV, fashion, whatever, to know who to look up to, if that makes sense. And definitely not in DR. Like definitely not in DR.
Yeah.
Right? So it was always so interesting feeling like I could claim a style because everything I felt like it's technically not for me, but I guess I can participate. And before I knew I was Black, right? Like that actually like culturally Black, you know, I would see the girls with the Jordans and the Pepe jeans and stuff like that in New York. And I would think that stuff is popping, but my mom would not dress me like that because we don't dress like that. The African American girls dress like that. So it was like, all right, so I can't dress like the African American girls, but also the Dominican girl fashion. I'm sorry, the like bright ass colored pants or the bright ass colored shirt.
And the tight ass clothes too. Like you can't have a shirt that's like a little flowy. It's like no, it's tight.
And there was this whole trend for a while. Remember where there was like the plasticky jewelry where it was like
yes. Why was I just thinking that too? Like everybody
yes,
they really stepping out in like Pretty Girl, but it was supposed to look like Charlotte Russe from 30.
Yes.
You know,
the long necklace and like the flats. Remember the flats?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You know, and so I was just, and I wasn't really into it, but I was like, well, more Dominican girls just like this. And my mom would often, because my mom actually, her first job when she came to the United States was dressing models on the runway. So she's very much into fashion. And like my mom would love to meet y'all and talk for hours and hours about fashion.
Oh yeah,
like,
I would love to meet your mom.
She loves that shit. I was just always like, but none of it matches. And I went through a little like punk rock phase, and I was like, that's what I'm into. And my mom's like, no, eso es de Satanás. It's
Satanás.
No, like you cannot just
emo.
Ella
No,
como
I'm
media,
not emo, like
media punk rock, media pura.
emo, like an emo girl.
like, you know what I mean? So it was so hard to find an identity in my fashion because my identity was not represented in fashion. So I was sort of like, and I'm an indecisive bitch. Let me be clear. I'd be indecisive as fuck. So it's like I would try things, but if I wasn't being validated and if other people didn't think it looked good, I didn't even trust and know if I thought it looked good. And half the time I was trying stuff, it was to fit in and not because I saw it and I was like, this. And then when those moments did happen, then the fact that I was big, porque hello, yo tengo mi chicho, yo estoy en chicha, right? Like,
No, estamos todos en chicha.
En chicha después de 20.
It was so hard to then find clothes that I felt sexy in that I could wear even being fat. Like I just was like, well, I like a lot of stuff. I love open, like one of the things I love to see is like open back things. Yeah. Oh, I love open back. I got a 6-pack back here that cannot support, you know, and that's a lot of conditioning. And so for me to undo the conditioning of I'm not supposed to wear that. And you know how we are like Dominicanos, we are criticones.
Oh, 100.
You know, and like I remember one of the last, the quinceañera I was talking about, the last time I was in DR, I wore my natural hair.
What'd you wear?
I wore this, honestly, I had gotten this dress from Macy's. It was it was a guest dress. It was cute. It was like, it was one of those, like, it has a string here, but then it has like the frizzy, not frizzy, but you know, it kind of looks like flowy here, like that shoulder cut. And it was like cute and black with like these nice, like vibrant flowers. But I also wore my hair natural, which was appropriate for it, but also my hair was in transition. So my curls didn't look like this. They were looking a little hurt. and my aunt got into an argument the next day. You know, all the like neighborhood bitches came over to my other aunt's house to like talk shit and debrief the whole party.
Literally.
And this neighbor who I guess didn't realize I was of this family was like, ay, esa, la gorda, que tenía esos cabellos fatal, Dios mío, porque yo no sé por qué ella no se fue a un salón y yo no sé ese afán con ese rizo, porque nadie estaba ahí con rizo, pero ella está llegando con rizos y blah, blah, blah. So, and for people who speak English, she was basically like, oh, did y'all see that fat chick who just looked atrocious in her dress and her hair was curly and like, why didn't she just get a blowout? And she said it didn't fit the occasion, that I was disrespecting the occasion by not having a blowout, because we know better that when we go to events, we gotta go to the salon, right? And my aunt lost her shit and was like, well, just pa que tú sepa, esa fea es mi sobrina. And
She came through though.
Se la comió.
She came through the aunt. That's so dope though.
You know, and it's because I think like it's taken some time. Like at first when me and my sister went through our natural hair journey, my aunts and my mom were like, are you sure? Because transition is hard, and transition honestly is not cute.
It's like the worst part of it.
Like I look so fucking I don't like using old pictures through my transition.
Girl, if I'm gonna send you some pictures of me, I looked hurt.
Yes.
I even asked my boyfriend. I was like, why were you with me back then?
I'm like, how
my boyfriend was like, you're the most beautiful girl ever. I'm like, son, I would break up with me. Like I broke up with me. Like I'm breaking up with me back then. Like,
right. But you know, I feel like for me, if the affirmation of even the transition and seeing what it looks like, and even having a fashion guide, gosh, if there was a Posh Palma back when I started my transition that like even covered like how to style your hair during its transition type shit, right? I literally needed to find influencers on the internet. I needed to find the Carolinas, the Ada Rojas. Like I needed to find girls just like me to do the work or undo the work rather that the fashion industry and the beauty industry had done on me that I feel like I couldn't participate.
Y por año, bro, because if you're telling me that it was, vamos a decir, like a year, but it's years long of you believe in something and then breaking that belief because it's not true. But then how do you find the people that can reaffirm you that you're doing the right thing because you feel lonely? Like transitioning feels so lonely because you look at yourself in the mirror and then you don't like what you see. But then your hair listens to you, so you gotta be kind.
Yeah,
you gotta be like, baby, them baby hairs, or like do something because you know. But I feel you. It's a lot, and I think it's also like there's certain outfits that you don't feel like. But with this outfit, I feel good with a pineapple. Yeah. You know, but when you're transitioning, sometimes our outfit would look nice with the hair down, but it's not looking how I would want to. And then you look at the picture of the girl with the beautiful curls too, and it's like, okay, is this helping me, inspire me, or is this messing up with my self-esteem?
Yeah.
And you gotta like recognize that and place those boundaries.
A lot of what in terms of like clothing, like I know with the store we talk a lot, and for me, as my own brand, like I talk about Gelsandra Guzman, who loves styling, who loves clothes, who loves creative direction and working with people and building brands. Like I always talk about you being confident in your own skin. Like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what I give you to wear. Like, you know what I mean? Tú podías entrar en ese cuarto y podía el cuarto entero de la quinceañera decir que tú estabas terrible. Y si tú eres una mujer que está confident, tú dices, bueno, pues a ti, o sea, you just brush it off like this. Like it's
exactly.
You know what I mean? So that to me is even more, it's very psychological. Like when it comes to fashion, like it fucks with you, but like at the end of the day, like you gotta embrace you, and you gotta love you,
like be your own hype
and yeah, you gotta be your own cheerleader and wake up every morning and be like, I'm beautiful, like I'm enough, I'm gorgeous, like I got this, you know. And then you can rock anything, you can rock anything, outfits from anywhere, and you look hot and you glow, and people feel it. It's energy. You out there in a room and people are like, yo, what is Jelly doing? She looks beautiful. Look at her. And my curls might be looking terrible, but I look beautiful because I'm confident.
Yeah. It's like this reminded me of something that we were in a mastermind class on Tuesday, and from like led by Gabby Guzman, an amazing, incredible woman. She runs this community called Las Comadres here, a virtual community. And she was like, you have to be comfortable with making people feel uncomfortable. And the moment that you like feel that in your heart, like you're like, I'm okay making even your own family uncomfortable. Estoy cómoda, and I'm sipping my mojito and I'm minding my business, rocking my curls con frizz or sin frizz, because there's good taste. You know, and it's like, you know what I'm saying? With the dry part, like, you know, the sections are drier, and although you apply product, but it's still dry, and you don't understand why the science behind it. But it's like you have to be comfortable, and like I think I have reached the point, and I could say that like for me, where I'm okay putting on whatever I want and rocking my curls however I want, and I do not care because I chose to be kind to me. I'm choosing to be kind to Valerie because I am my temple, and I'm choosing to love me as I am. And si el pelo un día se levanta and it's not okay, I'm like, well, but hoy we're gonna rock it how it is because I can't go crazy. Like I'm choosing, guys, to be at peace here and to make it through 2021.
That's it.
That's it.
Yes.
Chiquita cosa, but that's it.
I love that. We gotta just show up like, let's
Yeah.
go. You gotta do it.
Oh yes, I love it.
Send us an audio of this
Send
so
us
we
some-
can remember, and I play it on the speaker every time we
Send
feel
us a
like.
voice note, please. So whenever I wake up and I'm like, I put it on, I'm like, ooh, yo, that's like laugh.
Send us the audio so we can play it on the speaker.
But no, I think I love everything that you said because I think that, you know, that ties beautifully with identity, right? If you're not comfortable in your identity, the blackness, the Latinidad, the intersection of that, then it's hard to show up as yourself. And how can you rock anything? Like you're supposed to wear the clothes is not supposed to wear you. You know what I mean? So like, you know, I think that there's such an important thing. And for me, I've tried to begin to experiment with buying things that are usually not clothes that I would wear, but I see it and I'm like, oh, I really like it. I just don't believe I can wear it, but maybe let me try to wear it and see if I can pull it off. And I feel like I was just slowly getting into that, and then COVID hit. So then I didn't really get to like.
But now you're getting excited about certain times that you go out, so that's when you start experimenting again.
And I'm like, yeah, I want to get excited about clothes. Like I haven't really been like clothing shopping much and stuff like that during COVID. But I feel like knowing that the stores are open, I might start to venture out because, you know, when the spring comes and when it gets warm again, that's when I'm most excited to like put spring and fall are my two seasons that I'm like, I like to dress for, right? But I feel like I kind of want to make that attempt. I want to make that attempt and not just about like, oh, how do I rock it looking like with my curls and who I am naturally, pero también, like you said, the curviness, right? Like, it can't be the case that I'm waiting to be fashionable when I get skinny. I've been trying to get skinny my whole life and it hasn't happened, but I got to get fashionable at some point.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like,
No, you don't believe at that point. Like you're not living, and you gotta live and you gotta embrace it. Like
yo me he hecho tanta vaina. Yo tengo celulitis desde los 12 años. I always tell people this story, and I'm like, I work out as Valerie, like more than anyone. I eat not like 100% healthy, pero yo me echo masaje, yo he comprado crema, yo he tratado todo y la celulitis no se va. So yo llegué a un punto donde dije, hasta linda se ve en la celulitis porque I can't do anything anymore.
You can be so bad to yourself. Like that's like literally being so rude to yourself.
Yeah.
For no reason.
I'm like, dude, I'm gonna just rock the shorts and it is what it is. They pop out and like I have 2 kids, like demasiado bien me veo yo right now. Like,
yeah, you gotta. It's like my boyfriend. Yo tengo stretch marks, and he's like, "Oh, those tiger stripes, I like them." And I'm like, "I'm your tigresa," you know, like. But you gotta just do whatever you gotta do to be happy. Like, yeah, the way that I gave up. I'm like, I'm not trying to like. There's with the curls, there's no perfect curl pattern. Like, oh, the 3Bs, the 8. I'm like, yeah, okay, cool for buying products instructions that helps. But like me looking, I'm not gonna be like, this is a 3B, this is 8. Like I don't know. I'm just it's an afro, and I'm happy I have it.
Right. Amen. And so I want to ask, and I love the way. I just want to say I appreciate how descriptive you guys have been, because like you've answered like other questions that I haven't like asked outright, but they're already answered. So I'm like looking over here and I'm like, well, what else can I even ask them? But I think the one thing we haven't touched on is just being woke and being conscious, considering everything we just discussed, right? Like Skittle said, we're still in an industry where there is a dominance from a class that isn't necessarily interested in progressing the work that you guys are doing. So Can you talk a little bit about the challenges and benefits of being woke while you're running this business and as you're creating and building your vision?
Yeah, I think when we face that question constantly from people around us, but specifically the finance people in our team. You know, we have primarily two people that are hardcore finance, and they're constantly asking us that question. But I feel like something that we have realized is that you gotta walk the walk. And I am sorry to break it, but sometimes, yeah, people try to be on the fence. No, sis, you gotta pick your stand. And I think right now we're living in a world where like intentionality is so important, and buying with a purpose and buying with a cause, and like supporting local and supporting woman led, that I am sorry we accepted what might, you know, disadvantages from like the finance, you know, what they're advising us, that the things that might come with it. And we're okay with that because we are willing to walk the walk, and we are okay, and we are choosing, and we're remaining firm with what we believe in. And we are not going to, just because we're going to make an extra dollar on that, we're choosing not to, because it's not part of who we are and where we stand and where we want our brand to go. So it was hard to make that decision, but we had to make it like a few months back, where it came down to something that we had to decide that involved, you know, either we want to be more profitable or either we're, and it was like, no.
Yeah, it was funny because there's been like 2 or 3 times where things happen, like either socially, like in our environment and the world, like things that could be impactful with Posh Palma Styles. And sometimes we don't talk. And then when we come to talk, we're like, I'm like, yo, I have like 2 semanas con dolor de barriga, like thinking about this, like, I don't know what to do, but it doesn't feel right. And it's, again, you're going back to trusting your intuition. Like, we have that. You got to trust it. Like, if I don't feel good, like for the store, we were going to launch June 19th and it was Juneteenth. And me and Valerie spoke and we were like, yo, we can't do that. Like, why are we going to launch on that day? Like, but it was like a whole dilemma. And then we were like, no, we got to just trust it. And we launched the day before. We give it the space it needs to be given. And with the store, it was like that. We want to do things with our time. We don't want to be on anyone else's time. And we also want to represent what we want to represent. We don't need to have to call to anyone else.
No.
Because
no. And it's like, then you're not staying true to your purpose or like what you're, and there's not one thing that I hate most than hypocrisy. And it's like, you can't be a hypocrite, especially when you're trying to build with intentionality. So that's why, like, there's no in between. There's no middle point. There's no, I'm on the fence. You're either in or you're out. That's it. And I think, you know, it's mad hard, but it's like that, but then it comes down to it. It's not that hard too. Exactly. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. If you're willing to, it's so funny. I'm like, companies are so quick to put up a Martin Luther King quote or like put up a Black Lives Matter sign and stuff, but they won't action it. They will perform it. They won't action it. And then somebody will be like, wow, they donated X amount of dollar, but nobody wants to acknowledge the people who are losing X amount of dollar for upholding integrity. It's the same donation. The value, the difference is one is a donation, it's a petty, and the other one is a principle. And the principles cost them something, but they don't abandon their principles, even though it cost them money. And so I think that it's beautiful that you guys have taken that stance and that approach. I've like worked with brands and collaborated with the brands, like and me and Skittles, even as ladies who bochinche, who've been really tiptoe around like being clear around Blackness and like, oh, can we even say this if we're not Black? Like, why should we have a stance? It's not our fight, and it's disrespectful to act like we know what all these excuses. And I'm just like, I hear excuse, I hear excuse, I hear excuse.
Exactly.
If you want to make something happen, you find what is quote unquote appropriate. If you don't feel like it's appropriate for you to do it one way, then find the way that's fucking appropriate.
Or ask somebody. Like, don't be afraid to also ask and seek guidance.
Or educate
and, like,
yourself. Yeah.
Like, take the time to educate yourself, because I think that's one of the primary reasons why people are constantly being misinformed. Está bien. some information comes rooted in evilness and not wanting you to know. Pero edúcate, bebé.
Yeah.
Like there's so many resources too, and there's so many people, and you don't have all the answers. Like recognizing that you don't have all the answers, it's already mad fucking progress.
Yes.
So like we recognize that we push Palma Styles, we don't got all the answers, but we gotta walk the freaking walk. Do not tell me that we're gonna be like, how are we feeling? Nah, sis, we got this. This is how we're standing. This is how we feel. And if you don't want to support us, girl, bye. We're gonna get our community to support us.
Right. Because like cuarto, I say it all the time. People think that our community doesn't have the money to spend. Bullshit. Jordan has made so much money off of this so-called community with no money. Motherfuckers line up to spend money. You mean to tell me that we're not gonna spend money in our own? Like, I'm excited for the fashion line. I'm excited to shop. You know what I mean? Like already, just because I love y'all. I don't even know what the fucking clothes looks like yet. And I'm already hyped to whatever I identify with in whatever you put out. That's the item I'm gonna buy. And it's the purchase is not just the item, it's also the like, because I support that shit.
Exactly. And that's what I think, that's what for me, it's what I wake up in the morning and I'm like, that's what ignites me. Like to get, like we personally handwrite a note to each customer.
Wow, I love that. I love when I order things online and I get a hand note. It's such
a we write it, like Valerie writes it, I write, like we write it with our hand. It's like I want you to know who we are. Like I want us to feel connected. Like it's not like you're coming in and you're just buying, you're checking out and you're like peace out. No,
it's an experience.
You want to be part of us. Like we want to sit and have conversations like we're having right now. Like
Yes, and this has been such a fruitful conversation today. I have to say, I'm so happy that you guys have been our like season, reignition, to use the word.
Yes.
I just have to say I'm very proud of you, ladies. I so fucking respect the work that you do, and I just am so excited to know that the work you're doing is not even going to just stay here in the States, but that it's expanding to DR, because for as much shit as people like to talk about DR and all that shit, it's one thing to talk shit. It's another thing to go and actually support the cause on the ground, because we have to acknowledge that Lo Dominicano, yeah, it is 10 times harder for them to show up in this wokeness and blah, blah, blah. It wasn't until recently that people in the workplace were allowed to wear natural hair to work. So how could you even expect people to start loving their blackness where they can't even show up to work as black?
As who they are.
So much work we need to do that goes beyond just yelling at each other for not knowing we're black or not accepting we're black. That wakes me up. But then what you gonna do after that? Like, what do I do? Like, what do you want me to do if I'm still living in a system that doesn't support this lifestyle that you get to have in the States? Because even though it comes from oppression, it's a privilege for us to be out here speaking about our privilege. Because there's a lot of other countries and places where you do not have the privilege to even talk about it the way we talk about it. So I really respect that. And I just wanted to say that and highlight that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, all right. Let us know, where can we find you, follow you, drop your handles, any shout outs you have?
So check us out. Our Instagram for the store is Posh Palma Styles.
My personal one is Gelsandra, GELSANDRA _ la rayita de abajo, Guzman, GUZMAN.
And my personal IG is the Jefa Creator.
Yes, love it. And Skittles, where can they find us?
You guys can find us at Ladies Who Brunch on Instagram, Ladies Brunch on Twitter, and at Julissa for Julissa's personal page with an H at the end, and The Real Skittles with a Z for me.
Bomb content.
Awesome. And thank you all for tuning in this week. And until next time, bochinche.